we've been asked to provide an internet route to CE2, and these are always more complicated than they look. So getting an internet routing to a VRF is going to require crossing over that threshold twice. So the first time that we cross from the VRF into the main routing table is for the VRF. So set routing instance, CE2 spoke, routing options, static route, effectively the internet, next table, inet 0. So we're literally pointing our route, our static route, to the next table. And so we're just sort of breaking out of the VRF, we're jumping to the next table. Now, that static route actually needs sharing with the rest of the VRF. And that really depends where we are. In this example, we're actually on the hub. And the hub has an interface for the spoke, and it has an interface for the hub. So we know that that CE2 receives routes on the spoke interface and sends routes from the hub interface. So the best thing to do is to have a policy statement. So set policy options policy statement. We're going to call it default to the CE. And we've got a term here from the static which we've created with the unusual next table. And we're going to grab that route, going to accept it, and we're going to export it out to the spoke interface. And because we're exporting it to the spoke interface is going to learn that route, and then the CE2 itself knows what to do with routes coming in the spoke and then sending them out the hub. So it's in control of that. Now, if we weren't at the hub site, if we were at one of the remote spoke sites, then the way to get this route out would be a VRF export. And that's really worth noting, because on the spoke side, of course, everything's going to have to be a VRF export. But we're on the hub side. So this export here is out of the spoke interface, but it's not a VRF export, it's a straight export. So it's not a VRF export, but we are inside the VRF, because of course, that's where we have to be working. Okay, so that's the first crossover from the VRF to the main table. Now, effectively, there's going to be another crossover from the VRF to the main table, because we need to get all of the VRF information into the main table to be exported out the main BGP, which in our case is the iBGP, so that the other peers can find it and there's internet access in that main inet 0 table. Okay, so going the other way then, we're going to have a static route in the main table, and it's going to represent our CE2, and the next hop, because we're on the hub site, is going to be the interface of the hub. So the customer hub interface. Now, if we were on a spoke site, then that's going to be different, but we're on the hub site and it's going to be the interface of the hub. Okay, now we've got that route, we're in the main inet table. However, that route won't be valid because the hub interface is going to be inside the VRF. So it's one of the interfaces here. It's going to be inside the VRF. So because it's inside the VRF, we need to get at least that interface, that next hop interface, into the main table. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're back to rib groups again. So set routing options rib group, CE2 inet, got an import rib, and we're going from the CE2 hub inet into the main inet. And what we want is that interface. So we're going to be taking the interface routes under routing options into the main inet by applying the rib group to the interface routes. Okay, so that's made this route go live. This is the second of our static, so it could be an aggregate. So we've got a route from the main inet to our CE2. The next hop is now live. However, of course, the internet doesn't know about this route. So now we have to export this out, and now this is a true export. So this is coming over iBGP. it's the main IBGP, it's a true export, and we've got the policy statement. Policy options, policy statement, CE2 routes, turn 1 from protocol static, our static route here, route filter, we take the route filter and accept it. And remember, this route's live because the next hop is now being moved on the RIB group. And then that route goes out the main IBGP. Set protocols BGP, group, IBGP, export, CE2 routes. So really rather complicated. Any kind of internet access to a VRF is going to take crossing over that VRF INET 0 boundary twice. Once so that you can, the VRF can get to the internet, and then a second time so the internet can get to the VRF. And here we're crossing that boundary once with next table and changing the table, and on the way back we're crossing it with the RIB group.